Hello again, this is Michael Dent from Summer University talking about one of my favourite subjects, which is competitor analysis. Now, one of the 5 C's: customers, competitors, capabilities, context and cultures. And as you probably gathered by now, I'm a great fan of Sun Tzu. Now, Sun Tzu was the author of a book, and you can see how it was first written there on these little wooden slats. His book was The Art of War, and he wrote this centuries ago, and it's still very relevant even today. It's used in business, it's used in marketing. As I mentioned before, the term strategy comes from strategos, the Greek, which is basically how to lead an army. So a lot of marketing strategy jargon, in fact, comes from Sun Tzu. The book that I showed on slide 1 is particularly good. It's written by a Malaysian, Khoo Keng Ho. He has lots of really graphic and excellent examples which relate to both Malaysia and Singapore. So it's obtainable at Kinokuniya in KLCC. It's very reasonably priced, and it's one of the best books on Sun Tzu and the 21st century marketing strategy that I've ever read. Right, so that's a very famous but rather old person talking about the art of war. This is another golden oldie produced by a chap called Igor Ansoff. I think he wrote this back in the 1950s, and he also wrote a book on corporate strategy. And this is called the Ansoff's Matrix. And you will have to use this in your assignment. When you look at the industry that you're analysing, you'll need to think about which one of the 4 options it's got. Now, later on, I might show you a video from one of my old marketing professors, Professor Malcolm McDonald from Cranfield, and he talks about vectors of risk and which strategy makes the most sense. So the matrix is split into your current product or new products, your current market or new markets. And the phrases that he's allocated for each of these is that in your current market with your current products, all you can really aim for is market penetration, in other words, a bigger market share. Next best, and that's always the number one choice, go for market share, increase market share. But that's not always possible. So if you want to grow and you're looking at the next best option, it is very definitely product development. Product development means taking the existing products you've got, developing them and selling them in your existing market. This is relatively safe, and this is where most organisations tend to focus. If you look at Harley Davidson, for example, which is another case study that's often taught, you'll see how they bring out new products every year, even if they're just literally bells and whistles. It's a new product from the customer's perspective. The next one, which is a lot trickier in terms of risk vectors, is market development. And that means taking an existing product and going into a new market. And that is not that easy. If you think about the differences in culture between Malaysia and Singapore, if you sell chewing gum in Malaysia and think it should be a pretty easy job to sell it in Singapore, you'll have a rude awakening. So cultural differences, trying to sell cars in the United States that don't have coffee cup holders, these can all be hidden pitfalls that the marketing manager may not have anticipated. Now the last one, which my old Professor Malcolm McDonald used to talk about, was diversification. And his words were along the lines of, why on earth anybody would ever want to do this is beyond me. A new product in a new market, you're just asking for trouble. So when looking for growth, and all organisations are looking for growth, they need to think about which one of these 4 strategies they're going to follow. And another thing with strategy is it's usually not a good idea to have 2, or even worst case scenario, 3 ongoing strategies at the same time. In terms of alignment, you're really best to focus on one. Okay, you could be building market share whilst thinking about new products. That's quite sensible. And you might also be thinking about developing new markets in Thailand or Indonesia or whatever. But full gung-ho strategy on market development when you're ignoring market share opportunities in your existing market is probably not too clever. Right, the next analytical tool is something called the Boston Box, or the Boston Consultancy Group. I did briefly mention this a week or 2 ago, I think, and this is about your product line. You analyse your products and see where they fit. The axes can be slightly different in different textbooks, but the idea is you're looking at those products which create a lot of money for you today. They're known as cash cows. Hopefully in your stable you've also got some stars, and the stars are the products which are growing, maybe not too profitable at the moment, but you have high hopes for in the future. The bottom right are the dogs. The dogs are the ones that you kick out because they're unproductive or use up too much management resource or are too expensive or whatever. The one in the top right is called Problem Children. The name I prefer is the Wildcat because it's Scottish. But with a problem child, you don't really know how it's going to develop. It could end up being a dog, many of them do, or if you can successfully tame it or train it, whether it's a cat or a child, you might manage to move it across to being a star. And the ideal movement is problem children become stars, stars become cash cows. Eventually, whether you're a cash cow, a star or a problem child, you will end up ultimately in the product life cycle, or PLC, product life cycle. You will end up as a dog. And the question then is, when do you wish to divest yourself of that particular product or service? And the example I mentioned a while ago is of a friend of mine who was the marketing director for a Swedish pharmaceutical company called Pharmacia, and he regularly offloaded about 20 different products every quarter. And when I asked him, were they profitable? He said, yes. I said, are they growing? He said, yes. I said, well, why on earth would you want to get rid of them then? And he said, because we've got so many other products which are better. I cannot possibly train the sales force up on 700 or 800 different products. So the ones that fall beneath the cut line, we kick them out. So that's the Boston Consultancy Group Growth Share Matrix. You'll come across it a lot. You'll hear the terminology a lot. And again, this is a form of analysis which I would expect to see in any individual group assignments. Now, I quite like this slide. It's basically looking at how you analyse competitors, and this is something that comes into Porter's 5 forces, which again I'll talk about later. But one of the most important aspects of competitor analysis is new entrants or substitutes. New entrants are organisations that want to come in and take some of your profits away. And if you are very profitable, they will want to come in and take some of your profits away. So you always need to be on the lookout for new entrants. And the best way to avoid new entrants is to erect something called barriers to entry. which again Michael Porter talks about. And there are also barriers to exit, which make it difficult to leave the industry. A substitute is something which provides a solution to the same customer need, but on a different operational platform. So if I am Malaysian Airlines, a competitor might be AirAsia or Malindo, but a substitute would be the train, which sadly the Malaysian government has cancelled the recent proposed line between Kuala Lumpur and Singapore. A substitute could be driving a car. A substitute could be take a helicopter. What the Japanese army did when they conquered Singapore was they used bicycles. So you could cycle to Singapore if you were that way inclined. So it is a substitute. You need to analyse the level of industry competition, and there's that magic term, entry barriers, and that tells you which strategic group you are in. Now, I do like this slide. This slide is good because it used to constitute a large part of my job. So the first thing is you've got to get into the mindset of the competitor and work out what their current stated objective is. Not objectives, but objective, using the Mike Dent terminology. So assess their current objective, which you can get from mission statement, vision statement, statements to the press, websites, all sorts of places. And they may also tell you what their future objectives are. Excellent. So you now know what their objective is. Assess their current strategy. Think about what resources they've got with the resource-based view, and then predict what they're going to do. Now, I have to say that we were not particularly good at doing this. We did this bit really well, we did this bit really well, and we did this bit really well. And we predicted our competitors' future strategies, and amazingly, we nearly always got it wrong. But whatever their strategies were, we'd assess 3 or 4 of them, and we were always ready for whatever they did. So our prediction on which strategy they would follow was incorrect. Our risk probability scenario matrix had the option in, which was the option the competitor actually chose. So as a direct result of that, we were able to meet and parry a lot of their initiatives. One of the best ones was something which one of our competitors launched against us, which was called the Valentine's Day Massacre. Slightly bloodthirsty, but it basically involved taking chocolates and roses round to customers of their key competitors, and we'd anticipated this and were able to foil it extremely successfully. Otherwise, we might have lost a fair tranche of our existing customer base, which would have been unfortunate. Right, so this just tends to sort of talk about the same sort of thing, their current and future objective, your assumptions about the market, how it's going to go. Have they got money to invest? Are they looking to team up with a partner? What kind of alliances could they form? All that kind of thing. Again, this is going into a bit more detail. Thinking about the target markets. So are they looking for new target markets? Which ones are they particularly strong in? What is their weakness? Does their marketing mix differ from ours? Are they focusing mainly on sales promotions and utilising their stronger sales force? Or are they mainly using above-the-line media like TV, radio, or press. The minute you start to understand that, you start to get an idea of how you could meet a particular threat in terms of a campaign they may run. Again, I came across this once. One competitor of ours launched a massive poster campaign using cross-tracks on the London Underground, massive poster sites, and making claims which were, as it turned out, unsubstantiated. But by the time we got a Queen's Counsel to get them to take the campaign down, it had already expired. So understanding what they're doing, why they're doing it, and where their strengths are, give you far better chance of being able to combat any initiatives that they've got. The key indicators are sometimes called telltale signs, and it's absolutely amazing what you can find out from things like job adverts. So if your competitor is thinking of setting up a new branch, say in Johor or Penang, and you happen to hear about it, you can look in the newspaper or Job Street or whatever and see where they're advertising for customer service managers, office managers, area managers, or whatever, and that will tell you how close they are to actually launching. The other thing you can do with telltale signs is if they're thinking of launching or building a new office in the area, the first people that will know about it will be the commercial estate agents or possibly construction companies. So again, if you've got contacts in the right places, you can be forewarned. There was one example which we had of one competitor that was toying around with building a new airport in order to facilitate cross-channel cargo, and we did think it was rather ridiculous, and nobody would spend that amount of money building a new airport. But in fact, we found both from architects' information and recruitment adverts that this was indeed exactly what they were planning on doing. And it's also what Tony Fernandez did in KLIA when he couldn't get what he wanted from MAHB and the Malaysian government. He basically made sure that they had a new terminal built just for AirAsia. This one you'll see again in different places, and this is called the value chain. You might not be surprised to hear it's also called the Porter's value chain, and it looks at how you add value at different stages. So you end up with raw materials which don't cost too much. Then you do something to it, improve it, melt it, mold it, hammer it into shape. Then you've got to ship it out to the customers, the retailers, the marketing channels. Then you've got your marketing and sales overhead, how you're going to promote it and sell it. And then you may have the service element when it's faulty or has to be returned. And at each point, the costs go up, which is why each one of these bars is getting bigger. So you're adding value, but the cost is getting bigger too. You can also use this chart to analyse your competitors. How do they organise their inbound logistics? Where are their main suppliers? Are they in Thailand? Are they in Indonesia? Are they in Argentina or Chile? So where the raw materials come from is important. I mean, if you look at inbound logistics, if you've all heard of what's it called, Selangor Pewter, a lot of their raw materials comes in containers about once every 3 months from Chile, simply because the the raw material, the tin, there's no longer sufficient quantities of it in Malaysia, so they import it from Chile. Right, competitor resources. What I used to do is add a competitor battle file, and in the battle file we had 4 or 5 different marketeers in the marketing department responsible for each competitor, and they had to build up a profile which looked at their capabilities and their financial resources, their customer segments. One of the main things that we produced, which was for the sales force, which came out of the battle file, was answering key questions. So if a customer was adamant they wanted to use competitor B because competitor B was extremely good at so-and-so, we would have a well-tried, researched and well-understood riposte to that argument. And as a direct result of that, we were able to overcome a lot of customer objections and win customers that previously had proved somewhat immune to our seductive techniques. Now, I love this diagram. This is dead simple, really easy to use. Which magazine in the UK often refers to this as a kind of a blob analysis. So that if a product's really good, they give it 5 blobs. If it's rubbish, they give it 1. It's a bit like a Likert scale, if you like. The scale they use here is -2, -1, 0, 1 and 2. The way I do it is 0, plus, 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 minus and minus, minus. But it doesn't matter what way you do it, it's still blob analysis. So you can look at yourself, how good are you? Financially excellent, 5 in the Mike Dent blob analysis. Resilience, staying power, 1. Research and development, 2. Technological breadth, 2. Agility, that's the word that I would use nowadays. That's the new buzz term, agility, quick response, okay. European marketing, pretty useless. Now let's look at competitor A. Competitor A looks kind of similar near the top. But the big difference is European marketing. They're really strong there, and we're really rubbish. So maybe we should be thinking about doing more to either hit them or take the opportunity of expanding into European markets. We do the same for competitor B and the same for competitor C, and it gives you an idea of how you can combat your different competitors. Again, this is all relative. You can't do it against all competitors added together because that just aggregates to nothing. If you took competitor A, B and C for financial strength, it would net out as about 1, which is doesn't really tell you very much. So aggregating competitor analyses is a complete waste of time. But you see customers, not customers, you see companies doing this all the time. Right. One of the areas you need to look at here is what resources have they recently acquired, and have there been any changes in ownership? Because that might be a catalyst to a future change in strategy. So the key part of this analysis, I think the textbook is excellent on this point, is predicting competitors' future strategies. That's what you want to be doing. That is the job of a competitor analyst in a marketing department. And as Sun Tzu said, if you don't know your own strengths, then you don't know your competitors' strengths, then you're going to lose. This slide makes me laugh. I've really no idea what's in the textbook. It's kind of a ideal world scenario. What would be a nice competitor? I don't really know that many nice competitors, but if you were to have a nice competitor, this is what they would look like. They'd be pretty well balanced, strong, but with clear weaknesses, no real understanding of marketing strategy, a short time horizon, and be risk averse. Everything else is about, if you read it, it's all about supporting the status quo. I understand the rules. My assumptions are realistic. I support the current industry structure. I accept current profitability. I just want to make money. I just want the easy life. I don't want to make things difficult, and I'm risk averse. And they understand industry costs, which means they're not going to do something stupid. So that's an ideal competitor. Don't think I've ever seen one. Now, this is a good slide as well about sources of competitor information. You can find out an awful lot. You don't need microphones in their boardroom, although having said that, we swept our boardroom and found that we did have a couple in there. We did also find that some of our competitors had bought quite sensitive material on, I wouldn't say the open market, but in maybe the black market, about our customer base, which was very scary. And my boss's boss called me into his office at the time to ask me how on earth this was possible. And we eventually found that it was due to one of our ex-employees leaving to join a competitor, and sometime over the course of 3 or 4 days he'd sucked all of the information off one of our hard drives and taken it with him to the new company that was joining. So some of this can be a bit underhand. My advice is don't try and get too clever on this front, because if you work in marketing, this is of course against the Market Research Society Code of Conduct and also the Marketing Chartered Industry Marketing Code of Conduct, and you could be disbarred or barred. But it is quite legitimate to interview new joiners from competitors. Some of them may not feel comfortable doing this, and if they aren't, you don't do it. But if some of them, particularly if they work in sales, might be delighted to tell you about different things about their company. And if you want something very simple as a measure, and I'm very keen on these clever measures, if you're trying to calculate market share, one of the ways you can calculate market share is to recruit a very expensive market research company and get them to do some analysis amongst different customers, and from that you'll get a fairly good estimation of market share. The way that I preferred, but goes down like a lead balloon in Malaysia, is data sharing between competitors, which means that you choose one market research company between 5 or 6 different competitors and you share the information. You all want the same information. You all get the same information. It's a lot more accurate and it's a lot cheaper. So that is the sensible way to do it. But it works well in the Nordics. Doesn't work at all in Malaysia. But going back to market share, how would you work out what your market share is in comparison to another company? Well, if you get a new joiner, you can ask them, how many people in your sales team? And if they've got 20 and you've got 40, other things being equal, assuming that they have the same revenue responsibility per salesperson or per sales area, that suggests you've got twice a bigger market share as they have. You find out about another company. How many customer sales agents have they got? They've got 15, you've got 10. So that suggests that they're about 50% bigger than you, assuming the same telephone call volume and the length of the call and the complexity of the product and what have you. You can estimate from that. One of the really clever things that we did was we tried to work out market share of our competitors in London. And I thought this sounded a bit daft, but it worked extremely well and turned out to be very accurate. We got a couple of students to stand on Waterloo Bridge and count the number of vans of ours and the number of vans of our competitors. We did this for a week. Obviously, depending on the route, some of the vans could be going across the bridge and then coming back again. So you had to sort of take out the double counting. I don't know how they did that, whether they looked at registration numbers or what, but counted the number of vans, and it came back to being incredibly accurate against our own market share estimates, which we'd also cross-tabulated about with other measures. Now, this is the last slide, and this is looking at learning from different competitors. So anything that they're doing that's better than you, definitely work out if you can copy it. Before you copy it, just make sure it is working, because it may not be. And I've got a horror story there that I could tell you about as well. Unsuccessful competitors, what are they doing wrong? Try and avoid the pitfalls. Now, this is really important. It's called benchmarking. So we wanted to improve our customer services, and we launched an initiative to try and make our customer services far more efficient, far better than any of our competitors. And we knew that one or two of our competitors were red hot and, to be honest, better than us. And we were about to set out to work out what they were doing that were better than us. And then I think our managing director said, you're benchmarking the wrong company. If you want to benchmark for customer services, you need to benchmark against the best operator in the country. And we worked out that the best operator in the country was in fact American Express, which luckily happened to be a customer of ours. So we went down to their head office in Brighton. We had a very nice conversation with them. They were very happy to share information on how we could improve our customer services. We went back and implemented it, and it was mainly massively successful. I say mainly. We then tried introducing it in Germany, and one of the features of the American Express customer services unit was they had an abandoned call rate indicator in a sort of ticker tape neon display in the room, and it told the customer services manager how many calls were waiting, what the wrap-up time was, average length per call, number of calls per telephone sales rep, all this kind of thing. So we got to Germany, they installed all this kit, switched it on. The workforce came into work and said, "What's this then?" And we said, "It's our new fantastic abandoned call rate monitoring system." And they said, "Well, we don't like it and we want it off." And we said, no, it costs a lot of money. We can't take it out, and this is to improve efficiency. And they said, either it's off now or we're walking out. So we had a long, deep think about this, and we switched it off. So what works in Britain may not work in Germany. So here endeth the 5th lesson.